of God, we're saying, what does that look like? What does that mean? And how does that fit into the overall picture of God's mission? So being image bearers of God, we have a certain amount of responsibility that we carry with us, because it's not a character trait of ours, it's who we are. It's how we're created. So being created in the image of God is not a selective process. Every human being that has been created is created in the image of God. And so it's extremely important. This is one of the lessons that I've kind of just gravitated to when I go to the jail, because I think it's important where some of these men are at in their lives, that they understand this basic idea that everyone is created in the image of God, so they have value. And so the way that we treat others, the way that we look at others and interact with others is purely is based upon the fact that they, or should be based upon the fact that they are a created human being in the image of God. And for some, that's news, because if you've been used to looking at people as objects or as a means of whatever, money, power, you name it, you get a skewed view of people and their value or their importance. And that's exactly what we'll talk about a little bit later. It's exactly what Jesus hammered home with the Pharisees, because they would look down on those tax collectors and sinners as subhuman. And Jesus goes on to tell parables about, no, they have value. And so we'll look at that. So the first part of this is talking about humanity in God's image, and then sin, how it enters the picture, and then humanity in rebellion. So it should have been humanity in God's image cruising all the way across in green, like I have up there on the slide. But you've got sin that enters the picture, and now you've got humanity in rebellion, and it's because of that sin. And it changes a lot of things, and it impacts a lot of things. So let's see. So just a couple of things. When you talk about being created in the image of God, or created in God's image, thoughts. What are your thoughts? What are the things that come to your mind about what does it mean to be created in the image of God to you? What does that mean? When it says, let us make man in our own image, and it says, in the image of God, he created them, man and woman. What do you think of that? Okay. Yeah. The more you think about it, the deeper you go, and the harder it is to put words to it. I typically say, and you could say a bazillion things, but to me means that we are not created like all the other things that God created. He didn't create the baboon in his image. He didn't create the, whatever in his image. He created man, us, in his image. What's that? It is why we're so different. Exactly, right. So being in his image, there are endless possibilities with his image. Did somebody else say something? Yeah. But I also usually say that being created in the image of God means that we have abilities to do things that the other creation cannot do. One of those things is the ability to make choices and to choose what is right and what is wrong. My poor dog, he cannot choose what is right and what is wrong. He lives off instinct. He has learned if he does this, he gets a treat. But if he does this, not so much. But he doesn't know how to choose from what is right and what is wrong. That's one thing I usually say. Then the others I usually say is the fact that being created in the image of God means we have the ability to love. We have the ability to give and recognize and receive love. Yeah. To whom much is given, much is required. You're right. Because it's to be created in the image of God is a tremendous responsibility. Any other thoughts, Mark?
Yeah. Think about the words value and worth.
Yes.
A lot of people don't know why they're here and what's my purpose. I don't feel very valuable, feel worthless, and no, you
Yeah.
it's quite the contrary.
Exactly.
The enemy wants you to feel that way. He wants you to feel defeated. Every person has inherent value and worth.
Absolutely. Great point. Did I see another hand?
A humbling thing to me is that even people I don't like, guess what? They're made in the image of God too, and they're just as important.
Yeah.
Or people that I think maybe are evil, or they're still making we're still called to demonstrate that love. Betty, I saw your hand.
From the studies that we've been doing on the new heaven and earth, and he put his breath in us. It never says anywhere he put his breath in cows and dogs, but he did it in us. So that sets us apart too.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you didn't hear Betty saying that when God breathes into man to give him life, he didn't breathe life into anything else, but he breathed life into the man that and woman that he creates. The man, he created the woman from the man. But you're right. That was purely done. That breathing of life into man by God. Did I see any other hands? I love getting different people's vision and view of what that means. It means a lot of things. So some of these things that are listed here, these are just, and if I start reading things, it is because I don't have the words to say, but this young man, I don't know if he's young, I'm going to call him young, Christopher Wright, because his words are incredible. So some things that he said: God did not give to human beings the image of God. Rather, it is a dimension of our very creation. The expression "in our image" describes the way God made us, adverb, as opposed to simply describing a quality that we possess, which would be an adjective. The image of God is not so much something we possess as what we are. To be a human is to be the image of God. And it's not an extra feature added onto our species. It is definitive of what it means to be a human. So a couple of things that he mentioned from the perspective of mission, you have the affirmation that human beings have been created in the image of God. and these are just notes that I have on this first slide, sorry about that, that along with the immediate context of the narratives of Genesis 1 through 3, and we've talked about, have you noticed how many times we've gone to Genesis 1 through 3? Because there's so much that we are learning, and there's so many layers in those chapters of the beginning, that those three chapters in Genesis implies 4 further significant truths about humanity. And he said all of these are vital to biblical mission. So we'll look at those, first of all, those 4 things. The first is the fact that we're, as being created in God's image, these are the 4 significant truths about humanity. All human beings are addressable by God. All human beings are accountable to God. All human beings have dignity and equality. And the biblical gospel fits all. So just a couple of things about those. When you talk about all humans are addressable by God, they're all creatures to whom God speaks. God gave the different orders of subhuman creatures the basic instinct to go and multiply. They didn't need any further encouragement or communication in attending to that task. But in the case of the human creation, the human creature, however, we find God speaking not only words of blessing and fruitfulness, but also of instruction, permission, prohibition, followed later by questions, judgment, and promises. All of those things show us how all human beings are addressable by God. So in those things that I mentioned there, are all those situations only people who are like children of Israel? Okay. Exactly. So it's not limited to just those who have received the promise or promises. It applies to all human beings with no regard for ethnicity or covenant status. That's what I was trying to remember. I love this, the way he says this. God can speak to an Abimelech or a Balaam or a Nebuchadnezzar as easily as to an Abraham, a Moses, or Daniel. So to be human is to have the capability of being addressed by the living Creator, God, which to me is just mind-blowing. Yeah, Sharon.
I think about something while I was reading through this and you were talking is one of the ways that we are created in His image is that we have the ability to be holy, and we have a responsibility to be holy. And when we work towards that, we are becoming in His image as He is holy.
Yeah. And how do I say it? We're called to be holy. So we have the capacity to be holy. Are we inherently holy? That's what I was just thinking. I was like, yeah, it's something that you are called to be holy, and you are.
Be holy because God is
Because I'm holy. Yeah, because God is holy. Yeah.
But we are all born sinless, so that's of God. So we're not born pure and holy.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Hang on just a second, because I got to think about that. Tommy, maybe Tommy will say something.
I think inherent humanity was created sanctified. I mean, what we're reading in Genesis 1 is sanctification.
Right. Yeah.
You are, I mean, we got to remember what holy is. It's not being perfect or doing
Yeah.
everything right today.
Set apart.
Not saying bad words. That's not holy. Holy is being set apart for a certain purpose.
Yeah. And that.
And we were set apart as
Yep.
humanity in Genesis 1 to multiply, fill the earth, subdue it.
Yeah.
There's priestly language there, even in there. And we're royal. We're divine. We're royal because we're connected to the King of the universe. And,
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, yeah, we're unclean. I mean, we're not. You know, the Bible story tells us that when things are set aside for holiness, man, they're treated in a very distinct and certain way.
Yeah.
In a careful way.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're not all that, but yeah.
Yeah, that's thank you, because that's the distinction that you have to make when you talk about what holy means, being set apart. Yeah, thank you for that clarity. Let's see. So the second one, all human beings are accountable, and thank you for your comments and everybody's comments. All humans are accountable to God. So I said the other side of the coin of addressability is accountability. The man and the woman in creation narratives are creatures who must give an answer when God addresses them. Even in hiding from God, they must answer God. So think about this for a moment. Consider this assertion. Every human being on the planet is known by God, considered and evaluated by God, called to account by God. Therefore, all humans are accountable to God. And there are some ethical bridges to people of all cultures. There is some universal sense of moral obligation that human beings share, which is an important missiological foundation. So we've seen that in I just went blank, where talking about the Gentiles, where the law is written on their hearts, even though they don't know the law in particular, and that's in Romans, but I can't exactly remember where. But talking about the fact they had the capacity of God's law written on their hearts, and I think that's kind of what he's saying there. Is for for all cultures, there is that universal sense of moral obligation. Let's see. I'll move on. Yep. Thank you. Romans 2:15. So the third one, all human beings have dignity and equality. This is something I was referring to earlier. Being made in the image of God is simultaneously that which sets us apart from the rest of the animals and that which humans all have in common. No other animal is created in the image of God, so this forms the basis of the unique dignity and sanctity of human life. All other humans are created in the image of God, so this forms the basis of the radical equality of all human beings, regardless of gender, ethnicity, religion, or any form of social, economic, or political status. And I thought of one great example that Bobby Lynn and I observed Sunday when we talked to Josh and Noah. If you haven't got the chance to talk to Josh and Noah about their trip to Mexico, it was a short-term mission trip, but you can see it in their eyes, you can hear it in their voice, that they experienced something that gave them a completely new perspective about people and human beings, so they see people differently, they see people's condition differently. They've seen poverty and they, what's the word I'm looking for? They are, they're drawn to it. They're changed by it. Yeah, that's a good one. And that was one when I was thinking about that, this idea of this having dignity and equality, is having them get to experience that. Americans, we tend to think that the world and everything revolves around us. Our culture is built on that now. Is everything revolving around you and what you want? If you don't believe me, try and take a look at how many people have taken advantage of the Amazon Prime extravaganza. People are buying stuff left and right that they don't even know they need, or don't even know if they need it, but it's on sale. So there you go. What's that? I didn't buy anything. Were you saying something? Yeah.
I'm gonna give a little plug here for a movie. I'm always kind of hesitant to give plugs for movies today, but this is one that is worthy of the dollar. Angel Films, which produces The Chosen. There's one out right now called The Sound of Freedom, and it's about child sex trafficking, not just children, but women as well, and men. But it was filmed 5 years ago, and nobody would produce it, or nobody wanted to touch it with a 10-foot pole. Disney had the rights to it. They wouldn't show it. They didn't want people to watch it. So Angel purchased the rights, and now it's in theaters. And on July 4th, it did better than Indiana Jones, if you can believe that, which is a Disney film, by the way, which I think is
Interesting.
funny. But it is, it's a true story, and it will move you. I promise you, it will move you. And it's going to make you want to say, what do we need to do? Because slavery is worse now than it's ever been. And most child sex trafficking, you know where those children come to? Most of them? America. And people don't want to talk about it.
Did you say where they come to?
America.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, they're from all over the world, particularly in third world countries.
Yeah.
They're kidnapped, they're sold, anyway, it's just, I think about all human beings have dignity and equality.
What was the name of it again?
The Sound of Freedom.
The Sound of Freedom is the name of the movie.
It will be live streamed on Angel's platform, like where The Chosen is, but right now it's in theaters, and I would just encourage people to go.
Wonderful.
I know it's in downtown West right now. It's also in Oak Ridge, at the theater there.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
So we'll keep moving forward. The last one is the biblical gospel fits all. So the image of God is not the only ingredient we human beings have in common. We're also all sinners and rebels against our Creator. And as a result of which, God's image in us, while not lost, is spoiled or distorted. And what this point is affirming is that the Bible reveals God's answer to the human problem. An answer and a problem that are both alike universal, not merely culturally relevant or relative. Christian mission is not a matter of inviting or compelling people to become Westerners or Koreans or Nigerians. It is inviting people to become more fully human through the transforming power of the gospel that fits all, because it answers to the most basic need of all and restores the common glory of what it is to be truly human, a man or woman made in the image of God. Let's see. That's why the theological struggle was fought and resolved regarding conversion of Gentiles to Christ. It did not mean conversion to being Jews. No, the Gentiles, as Gentiles, were welcomed into God's people on the same basis as the Jews themselves: repentance and faith in the Messiah, Jesus of Nazareth. So those are those four significant truths that he mentions about humanity. So the next one talks about being created for a task. The fact that humanity was put here on the earth with a mission, as Tommy mentioned, to rule over, to keep, and to care for the rest of creation. And whatever way this human dominion is to be exercised, it must reflect the character and values of God's own kingship. So to me, that goes in line with the responsibility that we talked about of being created in the image of God, is that the way we exercise that dominion that it's talking about here, it still has to reflect the character and values of God himself. So human dominion over the rest of creation is to be an exercise of kingship that reflects God's own kingship. The image of God is not a license for abuse based on arrogant supremacy, but a pattern that commits us to humble reflection of the character of God. Any other thoughts on that one? I thought his points, he goes way deeper. Everybody who's taught this class knows when you're looking through this book and you're trying to glean out just the things you want to point out, you could be here literally all night. But we'll move forward. So next is created in relationship. Let's see. So Genesis 1 sets human, male, female complementarity closely alongside the image of God. Genesis 2 sets human, male, female complementarity in the context of the human task. So when we're talking complementarity, we're saying the fact that there's a complementary male-female relationship, that is a inherently reflection of God himself. So the sudden admission, this was really interesting. The sudden admission of something that is not good and God's evaluation of creation. What was it that God said was not good? Right, for man to be alone. So for him to have the admission of something that is not good in God's evaluation of the creation, which has been repeatedly described as good and very good, is startling. What is not good is that the man, the earth creature, should be alone, Genesis 2:18. But the immediate context, the problem in the immediate context, the problem of this aloneness is not merely that he would therefore be lonely in an emotional sense. God is addressing not merely a psychological problem, but a creational one. The problem is that God has given immense task to this creature in Genesis 2:15. He's been put in the garden to work it and take care of it. When added to the task to fill the earth, subdue it, and rule over the rest of the animate creation, the human task seems limitless. A man cannot tackle such a challenge alone. That is not good. And that is what is considered not good. He needs help. So it is significant that the term used to describe the project God now embarks on is not to find a companion to stop him feeling lonely, but to find a helper to stand alongside him in this huge task laid upon him as the servant, keeper, filler, subduer, and ruler of creation. He doesn't just need company, he needs help. Any thoughts on that or anything that comes up? Yeah, Tommy?
Tim Mackey translates the we're there, woman as a helper, as an ally. I mean, and that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think, as Wright says, God said, be fruitful and multiply. Adam couldn't by himself.
Exactly. Yeah.
He didn't, not everything was there needed for that.
Yep. Great point. And I love that term, that word, ally. So male and female are necessary not only for mutual relationship in which they will reflect God, though certainly for that, but also for mutual help in carrying out creation mandate entrusted to humanity. And then God's creative intention for human life right from the start and projected into the new creation includes social relationship, loving horizontal relationships between people, starting with marriage, but extending to include all other social relationships are part of God's desire for human life. So our missional objective is not limited to the vital and urgent evangelistic task of helping other individuals come to a right relationship with God that will secure their individual eternal destiny. We're also to share God's passion for healthy human relationships here and now between individuals, in families, in the workplace, throughout society, and between nations. So in the interest of time, we'll move forward to where I've got the red headers, because sin into the picture changes things. So Genesis quickly moves on to show that things did not continue as God intended. Sin entered human life through rebellion and disobedience. And just as our theology of mission must embrace a holistic understanding of creation and humanity, it must work with a radical and comprehensive understanding of sin and evil. The profound simplicity of the narrative of Genesis 1 through 11 shows us at least three things about sin that must be taken into account in biblical mission. Number one, sin affects every dimension of the human person. So physical, meaning creatures in the created physical world. Spiritual, a unique intimacy of relationship with God. Rational, unique powers of communication, language and addressability, consciousness, memory, emotions, and will. And then social, their male and female genders reflect the relational dimension of God. So all of these are combined in the integrated human person in Genesis 2:7 as a living being. That's what is referred to as a living being, but it's made up of all of those dimensions. So he uses the example of Eve, where he says, Eve, let's see. Yeah, the story of the temptation of Eve and the collusion of Adam involves all aspects of human nature. Spiritually, Eve was led to doubt the truth and goodness of God, undermining the prior relationship of trust and obedience. Mentally, she contemplated the fruit under discussion. Her reflection was rational. It was good for food. Aesthetic, it was pleasing to the eye. And intellectual, it was desirable for gaining knowledge or gaining wisdom. And all of these capacities of the human intellect are good in themselves, commended as highly prized gifts of God. There's nothing wrong with Eve using her mind. The problem was she was now using all of its power in a direction that was forbidden by God. Physically, she took and ate. These are simple verbs describing physical action in the physical world. Socially, she shared the fruit with Adam, who was with her, and thus he moved in the direction that whole conversation, reflection, and action was taking. So the sin was shared. It entered into the core of human relationship, giving birth immediately to mutual shame and blame. So number 2, sin affects human society and history. The individual effects of sin are glaringly apparent in the Genesis narrative. And then he talks about how the prophets, through the prophets, you see that sin spreads horizontally within society, and sin propagates itself vertically between generations. So it generates context and connections that are laden with collective sin. Sin becomes endemic, structural, and embedded in history. And Judges and Isaiah are the 2 examples that he uses. Yeah. Yeah. That we have referred to that as the big lie. You've heard people say it when it has to do with something between a husband and wife, where they say it won't affect the kids. It will affect the kids. Yes. Mm-hmm. You're right. Yeah. You're taught from a very early age, and I think it's wisdom that your actions have consequences. Absolutely. Exactly. Yeah. And that's what I was saying as far as Judges and Isaiah, they do that very thing. So let's see. Judges portrays with its slow crescendo of vile behavior. Isaiah attacks those who legalize injustice by passing laws that give structural legitimacy to oppression. Isaiah 10, 1 and 2. Woe to those who make unjust laws, to those who issue oppressive decrees, to deprive the poor of their rights and withhold justice from the oppressed of my people. Jeremiah is shocked to discover that the whole of Jerusalem's society is rotten from top to bottom. Jeremiah 5. The historians comment that successive kings of Jerusalem, Tom Drennan used to tell us this all the time, and it's so important to remember when you talk about the kings of Jerusalem or of Israel. The historians comment that successive kings of Jerusalem, with very few exceptions such as Hezekiah and Josiah, emulated and then surpassed the wickedness of their predecessors, so that the wickedness of the people accumulated through the generations until the weight of it became simply intolerable to God. So sin affects human society and history. The third, sin affects the whole environment. Did I miss one? Have I been missing? I'm going backwards. Here we go. Yeah. Sin affects the whole environment of human life. When human beings choose to rebel against their Creator, their disobedience and fall affected the whole of their physical environment. And this is immediately clear from God's words to Adam. Cursed is the ground because of you. Genesis 3:17. The Bible unequivocally states that the fall radically distorted and strained our human relationship with the earth itself, and also frustrated creation's primary function in relation to God. Romans 8:20. And we just studied that. As a matter of fact, I remember studying that particular lesson. We live in a cursed earth since Adam, and a covenanted earth since Noah. So our mission theology needs to take full account of the radical realism of the former and the limitless hope of the latter. So keeping both of those in mind as far as sin, how it affects the whole environment of human life. And I think, yeah, that's all I actually had for tonight. And next week, we sort of continue on. I forgot the name of the next section. Do y'all remember what it is? I forgot it. I've got it right here. Yeah, it's yeah, a paradigm evil. I only did that once, Ty. I was pretty impressed. Yeah, a paradigm evil, wisdom and culture. So we'll dig into that next week. I know I read a lot tonight, but some of that is just so that I speak intelligently His words and not mine that would be fumbling. Any other thoughts as in terms of around what we've been talking about? Being made in the image of God is serious business. It's wonderful. It is a wonderful thing to be created in the image of God, but it has such far-reaching opportunity that you have to be really consciously aware of how we influence and how we treat, every other living, breathing human being.
My actions and what I said until I worked in daycare. Yeah. And when I worked in daycare for that year or two, and the little children were watching me as much as I was watching them, picking on what I was doing and everything, I thought, Cat, you better be careful what you say and what you do to my son. Them little children are watching me.
Catherine said, all I ever learned about theology, I learned in daycare. They do. Children are the great teacher. Yeah. Exactly. Good and bad. All right, let's pray. Father, thank you for our time. Thank you for your creation and the fact that being created in your image, and as we talk about your mission, we realize that as your image bearers, that we are very much a part of that mission. And so it is a tremendous honor, but also a tremendous weight that it takes as we learn the far-reaching effect of sin, but also as we mentioned earlier, just the limitless possibilities because of your creation and because of your promises. So thank you for bringing us here tonight. Thank you for loving us. I pray that you guide us and direct us through this week, and it's in the name of Jesus that we pray. Amen.